To all units, proceed to your post assignments. All units, proceed to your post assignments.
The other thing I'm really worried about is what's happening at these ICE detention centers, where it's happening not far from where I live in Broadview, Illinois, where they set up an ICE detention facility, and the administration is rounding these people up, which I support, but they're doing it in a very provocative way. They're broadcasting it. They're making hype edits on Twitter of like these raids on apartment complexes, which I think are very cool, but it's somewhat provocative. And Antifa's showing up. In order to protect ICE, the administration's putting DHS. Well, now they're protesting the DHS presence, and the administration of the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago are telling Chicago police, don't help ICE. And they're encouraging the protesters. And what I see there is like a level of tension that just keeps increasing.
Yes.
And there's leadership. There's civilian leadership on both sides. Like the governor and mayor, who are Democrats, won't back down versus a Republican president. There's a security division too, the police versus ICE, the police versus DHS. There's a constitutional question about the federal supremacy, you know, and I see all the ingredients of like a low boil civil conflict, full blown civil war. And I'm not that guy, but I see all the ingredients there for that to happen. So I'm deeply concerned about where that will go.
How would you handle it if you were in charge? If you're the president, what do you do about that?
I think maybe this is controversial, but they have to crush the other side. They have to, because you can do one of two things. You cannot challenge the left and let them do their thing, or you can utterly confront them and defeat them and remove hope from the equation. If you resist, you will be arrested. Like this is an insurrection. There's 10 million people here illegally. We're getting them out. You're rioting. You're going to jail too. Like it has to be crushed. But if you do anything less than that, if you do in the middle, all you're doing is antagonizing and feeding the other side. And if they think there's a chance they can win, they will get bolder and stronger and they'll start to rally. And that's when it's sort of like people think it's close or like it's contentious. That's when it breathes. That's when oxygen is fed to this kind of fire. So if I were Trump, I would say screw 200 National Guard, like arrest the mayor of Chicago, like arrest the governor, shut it down, like make it clear, like Washington, you know, bring in the troops and say the federal government is supreme. The immigration law is the law of the land. If you're not on board with that, you're going to jail. If you attack ICE or box them in with your car, you're going to jail for a long time. Anything less than that, you might as well just not even bark up that tree at all.
I think we're not going to be slowed down by any story about changes in leadership. I can tell you that Trump administration is dedicated to achieving a record deportation, vast majority being criminal aliens, making this country safer every day. But as far as personnel changes, that's under the purview of the Secretary of Homeland Security. I'm at the White House and work with people like Stephen Miller, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, to come up with strategic policies and plans, how to get success, how to maintain success, and how to get the numbers even higher.
Okay, we're getting there. Yeah, baby, it's episode 4 of Probable Cause with Jeff Norman and Greg Dillon. And our special guest tonight is George Ferko, a former federal and state prosecutor, as well as a former adjunct professor at George Washington University Law School. Thanks for sticking with us. I see in the comments one of our old pals, Valley, is back. Valley's been playing hard to get lately. So sorry for the delay, guys. George was having some technical difficulties, and we have him only on audio tonight. So that picture of him is about all you'll be able to soak in. Such a handsome man. What a shame we can't see him live. How you doing, George?
I'm doing fine, but I think your audience is better off with me just having the picture of me.
Okay.
There you go.
There it is. Very high resolution photo. Not bad. So Greg and I, first of all, hello, Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Jeff. And George, nice to reconnect with you after many years.
Absolutely. Hi, Greg.
This is our 4th episode. We're getting to know the audience and vice versa. Those of you who have been with us in the first 3 first 3 episodes may notice that Greg looks a year older. That is because he just celebrated his birthday a few days ago. So happy birthday.
Explain the balloons behind me, yes.
Oh, right. The balloons. How festive.
Mine is coming up in a few days.
Oh, happy birthday to you as well, George.
November 3rd.
Okay, I'll make a mental note of that. What's your shirt size?
My shirt size is XL. I do have
XL. I thought you said exhale.
XL.
You might have to exhale.
I do have.
All right.
I'm not in quite the shape that Greg is in.
Oh, you can't tell from the headshot.
That's good. That's why I picked. That's one of the reasons I picked that one.
Right. Well, Greg and I actually, as we were going over last week's stories, were saying flat out, boy, I wish George was here because some of these things are kind of complicated, and it's just not always apparent how to interpret it. So, Greg is a law enforcement veteran, of course, and I'm only a fake lawyer. So we're glad to have you here. So one of the issues that we were grappling with was a ruling by a Chicago area judge saying that ICE agents cannot arrest anybody in the courthouses there unless they have a warrant. What they had been doing is going in, pursuing people for whom they do have a warrant, but if they happen to be able to catch other people while they're there, they were nabbing them. And this judge says not only can they not do that, but if they do disobey the order, they could be subject to arrest. And Greg was not only a former FBI agent, he used to work as a court officer. And I said, how'd you like to take on ICE? And he said, I would disobey those orders. How do you interpret this situation, George?
I think the judge is way out of line with this. I don't see how he can issue such an order. I don't know what his authority is for that order, because ICE is operating pursuant to federal regulations, federal law, and I don't think that they can tell ICE agents not to go and arrest someone even if they don't have a warrant. I mean, that's just not how it works.
Now, George, I have a question here. Would the judge be able to get around it by holding someone in contempt of court?
He could, but it would have to be somebody has to prosecute the contempt. Unless it happens in the presence of the judge, there has to be a body, a prosecutor in the case. And Trump is the prosecutor. Trump, the DOJ is the prosecutor. And they could just decline to prosecute it. Just as Merrick Garland declined to prosecute when Eric Holder was held in contempt.
Right. But George, I guess my question is in a state court, not a federal court, but a state court, if the judge decided to hold an ICE agent in contempt, it would be a state charge, no?
It would be a state charge, but I don't see how that would fly under the supremacy clause. If there's a conflict between federal and state law, and excuse the pun, but federal law trumps state law. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work any other way. I mean, that's, a 200-year-old case, 250-year-old case, McCulloch versus Maryland, that the federal law trumps any conflicting state law.
But I guess my question would be, nothing would prevent the judge from compelling a court officer or a state trooper to effect the arrest and then have it litigated at a later time.
I suppose that's true.
Okay.
I suppose that's
true. But is that something that would actually happen? Like, Greg, you said that you would refuse to follow those orders. Do you think, could you really envision any officer with any agency in the country actually taking on ICE in this manner?
Yeah, I could see some left-leaning supervisor that does not want to fall out of favor with the judge making a poor decision in doing that. Yeah, conceivably, yeah.
And if that were to happen, would you expect that the ICE agent would just submit to the arrest and challenge it later, or do you think there could be some resistance?
I'm guessing, based on the numbers, they don't go there by themselves. they're usually going to have a squad with them. So it could be sort of again, another pun coming here, a Mexican standoff.
That's an interesting pun. And also, like you say, strength in numbers. So, in this hypothetical scenario we're envisioning, we don't know if there will be a bunch of ICE agents around either.
No, but they tend to, I mean, I don't want to say this in a mean way when I say travel in packs, but there's safety in numbers. They're not going to go into a courthouse with just two ICE agents. There's going to be probably a minimum of 5, and with another 5 in reserve at the exits. So they're not going to be, really outnumbered. And I can't expect that they would, that someone would be foolish enough to try to take on the whole contingent of ICE agents. So I don't know what would happen there. I just think everybody would go their separate ways, and there'd be a lot of phone calls and meetings afterwards.
I think the judge would then order them all to appear in court. The federal judge would order them to appear in federal court.
Have you gentlemen ever heard of anything in the history of our country that's comparable to what we're discussing? Or is this, what's that Latin phrase? Sui generis or something like that? Yeah, sui generis.
It's been,
sui generis?
Sui generis, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time. Going back in history, there was the famous incident where Andrew Jackson disobeyed the Supreme Court on the Trail of Tears case with the Indians, and Jackson's famous line, supposedly he said it's, maybe he didn't, but Justice Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. So that's kind of the conundrum that federal judges are in, is that they really don't have any enforcement power. It has to be based on their goodwill, their common sense, their allegiance to the rule of law, and not just doing something off the charts. When they get that way, who's going to enforce it for them?
Right. And they're not necessarily going to be able to tell immediately whether or not they have a warrant. So really, to enforce this, if they see an arrest being made, they're going to have to start interfering right then and there and saying, hey, do you have a warrant? Like right in the middle of the arrest, right? How else are they going to find out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jeff, I had read the article that you had forwarded to me, and it seemed like the judge, keeps expanding his territory, where it wasn't, they couldn't make an arrest in the courtroom, they couldn't make it in the courthouse, and then it included the sidewalk outside the courthouse and the parking lot. And, it's a head scratcher, because I'm like, how far does he think his jurisdiction, can go?
Right. Well, there is, I guess, a logical reason for it. They're concerned about people being afraid to show up in court for other matters. But having a logical reason doesn't mean it's constitutional to do this.
Correct. Yeah.
And Jeff, right. I'd like to throw out one scenario for you. I mean, the flip of this would be someone who is wanted for a criminal, state charge, and they know that he's going to be going to federal court for an immigration, hearing or something like that. There would certainly be no backlash if state authorities arrested him on the steps of the federal court while he's going to go show up for his federal immigration hearing, when they have an active arrest warrant for him on a criminal felony charge.
Well, I guess it depends how they want to wage their political fight. That's what's going on, I guess.
Right.
Agree.
All right. Well, another example of state versus federal authority is the temporary ban that was imposed on Trump regarding the deployment of troops, which is a word, I guess, that's being used in this case to refer to National Guardsmen, to Portland. As of last week, Trump was temporarily barred from doing that. He got a ruling saying that it was within his authority, but the appeals court said, Greg, we were talking about how do they even determine how many judges, remember that conversation?
Yes.
How many judges are actually going to hear it?
Right.
And so they said by 5 p.m. today, and I assume that means Pacific time. George knows all about time zone importance. They said by 5 p.m. today, which would be 8 p.m. our time, they're going to decide whether or not the entire appeals court will hear it. So it's on hold until that time. George, how do you think this should play out?
Excuse me. Well, the Ninth Circuit in a 3-judge panel ruled in favor of Trump and overruled the district court judge. Now, what the issue is going to be is whether or not the entire Ninth Circuit will hear the case en banc, all of the judges. And I guess you said that's going to be at 5 o'clock, which is
well, they said they would decide by 5 p.m. today whether or not the whole court would hear it, or else this hold would expire at that point, and I guess it would revert back to Trump having the authority.
Yes, exactly. That's how.
But I mean, how should they rule? I guess was the question.
Well, I think they should rule in favor of Trump. This is a little bit of a murky issue, but I think the deciding factor for me is that the troops are there to protect ICE from the lawless nature of Antifa and how Portland has been. And I just don't see why it's not within the purview of the president to protect executive officers, executive people, the ICE agents.
All right, we're getting questions about you, George, from our audience. They want to run a check on you.
Sure. Go ahead.
The first question you might be able to see on your screen is from our friend Valley. She wants to know, what's the difference between a lawyer and an attorney?
No difference.
It's a matter of personal preference.
Yeah.
We could throw in barrister too if we want to.
We could do that. Yes, exactly.
Counselor. Shyster, if you want to give it a negative spin. Yeah. Hero, if you want to give it a positive spin.
Those are all valid synonyms.
Supermodel in some cases. Who knows?
On that one, at least not for me.
All right, a more, shall we say, sophisticated question from Stefan in the Bronx. What kind of law does George practice?
It was primarily. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I said. I guess the first question should be: do you still practice law?
No, I am retired, but I practiced mostly criminal law for most of my career, which began in 1987. As you said at the beginning, I was a state prosecutor in Connecticut, worked with Greg, and did that for 15 years. Then I became a federal prosecutor in Arizona as an assistant U.S. attorney. And then I did 3 years in Washington, D.C. with the old Office of Special Investigations, which is now Human Rights and Special Prosecutions Section. And the original OSI were called the Nazi hunters. They went after all the Nazis who fled Germany and Europe and came to the United States for safe haven. And it was our job to get rid of them and get them back to their country. Our biggest case, our most notorious as well as infamous case, was the John Demjanjuk case. Who was... So it was like a 30-year battle. We originally had him sent back to Israel. He was tried there for murder. He was sentenced to death. And then we discovered that we had withheld some favorable evidence to him. And the original theory was that he was Ivan the Terrible. And it turns out that he wasn't. And so it went on for 30 years. And finally, we got him removed from the United States and sent to to Germany, where he was placed on trial for accessory to 22,000 counts of murder. He was convicted, but then he died before his appeal was up, and so it had to be vacated.
That was on Netflix, George, wasn't it not?
It was indeed, yes.
Yeah, I remember watching that.
The Neighbor Next Door, or something like that.
Yes, right. They had to modify it from Ivan the Terrible to Ivan the Rude.
Yeah. Yes. It was an interesting case, and I had the chance to work on a little bit of it, although my role would be barely a footnote in the 30-year history of that case. But I did get a chance to work on it at the very end when we were trying to get him deported to Germany.
Do you see our friend Stefan? He's saying the Israeli Supreme Court vacated that decision. Is that correct?
It did, yeah, and it was the correct thing to do.
What an intelligent audience we have. All right, so you specialize in criminal defense. So
criminal prosecution.
Oh, criminal prosecution.
I've done a wee bit of criminal defense, but not much.
Okay. So let me ask you, we have some of the big cases that are in the news, but here's sort of a fun, weird story. My guess is you wouldn't have too hard a time prosecuting what we're going to see in this video, assuming that the perpetrators were actually apprehended. Let's take a look at this.
4:54 a.m. and a pair of men in this maroon Kia are pulling into the parking lot of this West Indianapolis laundromat. The passenger grabs a chain and they head into the laundromat and straight for the ATM, where they quickly realize they forgot to attach the chain to the back of the car. The driver hooks the chain to the hitch, but it looks like the chain is about 7 or 8 feet too short. The driver gets back in the car and puts the car in reverse, and the car smashes through the glass door. The passenger tries to attach the hook to the back of the ATM, but try as he might, the chain is still too short. The driver gets back in the car and backs the SUV closer to the ATM. The passenger reaches behind the ATM and attempts to attach the hook to the back of the machine, when suddenly the driver takes off. The passenger chases after the car. He heads to the ATM, and the SUV crashes into the washing machines. He gives the driver the okay sign, but the ATM does not move an inch. The driver floors it. He's given it everything he's got, and now the wheels are beginning to smoke. At this point, they decide to call it a night, leaving behind nearly half a dozen destroyed washing machines, as well as a giant hole in the front of the building.
All right, I know what the defense is. He just wanted to use the ATM to wash his clothes, and he was having trouble getting change for his dollar. What do you think? Would you be able to prosecute that, George?
Oh, of course. It's a good thing the criminals are stupid like this pair.
Well, that's got to be in the Hall of Fame of ridiculous. You know, they say, I don't know if there's something analogous to the Keystone Cops, like the Keystone Criminals or something. Yeah. But if that's, by the way, if that's for me, tell them I'm not in.
Okay. Sorry about that.
All right. That's okay.
I keep apologizing.
So,
I'm awfully sorry about this.
No, that's all right. Don't worry about it. So let me put the question to both of you guys, because you've both had a lot of experience with all different kinds of crimes over the years. Can you think of anything comparable? Not the specific details of this, but just as far as just ridiculous, stupid, keystone criminal type behavior. Can you think of anything comparable in your careers?
Greg, you go.
I mean, there's been criminals that have come down either chimneys or air vents and then realize they can't get back out again, and then they're trying to break out through the front door, and they're not doing well with that. You know, there's if you think back, I mean, there's all sorts of ineptitude and incompetence, and that you can look back and laugh on.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything, George?
You know, there are a lot of them that come to mind. Nothing specific right now, but there are so many of these stupid criminal things, these stupid criminal videos that you see on TikTok and elsewhere. Yeah, this was a good one though.
Yeah, this one I think takes the cake. All right, so let's take a look at what's in the news today. I guess I'm not sure about the procedures, but I guess Trump already notified the court, whatever the step is called, before it's actually appealed, that he would appeal. So he just did formally appeal his conviction. This is for the Stormy Daniels case. And I don't know how closely either of you have followed this case. As a layman, fake lawyer, I actually have followed it pretty closely. And to me, I think this might be the most ridiculous of all the cases against Trump. There were so many things obviously wrong about this case. And I know you said when we were exchanging our messages today, George, it doesn't look like anything new to you. But if that's the case, then let's just say what's ridiculous about it. Can you read on your screen there the points that Trump is highlighting in his appeal?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Now, in the news, let me go back to that. Where is it? See, they're making an issue out of the immunity, and all the armchair lawyers on X and Facebook are saying, well, he wasn't even president when this happened. But that's so typical, and that's actually another question I have for you, but I'll save that for a moment. How annoying it must be for you to have laymen constantly saying stupid things. But it's not that the behavior that is the subject of the trial took place while he was president. It's that evidence was introduced against him that had to do with his presidential duties. But there's also other issues too.
There's a ton of issues in that case. One of the big ones you have, it's the third bullet point down, is there was no unanimity instruction from the judge. They charged it in a very, very odd way, very, very vague. They didn't specify what was the crime that would trigger it to make it a felony. These were misdemeanors unless you had fraud, and in which case it would make it a felony. And that's, by the way, how they got around the statute of limitations, or one way. But
and they made it a felony which actually is a law in the New York books, that if the misdemeanor was committed for the purpose of covering up another crime, then it becomes a felony. But they never identified the other crime, did they?
They never did. And there's supposed to be a unanimity instruction that they have to agree on what was the predicate act. They have to, all the members of the jury have to agree on the predicate act. They never said what it was. There were three, or actually, I think they did give three possibilities, but you have to be unanimous on which one. You can't have a situation where 6 jurors say it's one predicate act A, another 3 says predicate act B, and another 3 says predicate act C.
All right, slow down, because I want the average layman to understand how absurd this is. Tell me if this is accurate to say it this way, George. Basically, what this judge told the jury was to find Trump guilty if the jurors felt that there was some second crime and it could be anything. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, that pretty much is it. Yes.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So all you Trump haters, you can hate the guy, but is this what you want for justice in America?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, this is because they didn't really care about it getting reversed on appeal. They wanted to be able to get the conviction. So all this time they could say, and they are saying it, Trump's a convicted felon. Trump's a convicted felon.
Absolutely.
Well, he won't be ultimately, though, right?
I don't think so. I mean, even in New York, just like the Tish's civil fraud verdict basically was overturned, I think this one will be overturned even with the New York Court of Appeals.
And the average person, unless you hate Trump, shouldn't even consider this like a public offense. I mean, there's no harm, or there's no intended harm or actual harm to anybody. He was trying to hide an extramarital affair is all.
That's about it. And the other thing that's absurd about Bragg's case is that it was just chump change. And it's a campaign finance violation is what he basically pinned it on. But yet Trump spent like $70 million of his own money in that election. And this was maybe $140,000. I mean, come on, how would that be a campaign finance violation, when he spent $70 million, but wanted to hide $140,000? I mean, just absurd.
Well, my understanding of there's at least two issues pertaining to the campaign finance law. One is it's a federal issue, not a state, so New York doesn't have any authority. The other is the campaign finance law requires campaign expenses to be reported, but this was a personal expense, not a campaign expense. And the judge wouldn't let Brad Smith, who's the former chair of the FEC, testify to that effect. But he did allow Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, who pled guilty to it. But he pled guilty to a campaign finance charge to please the prosecutor. Trump was never even put on trial for it, right? I mean, does this happen in the law where some court treats you as guilty of some crime when you've never even been put on trial, let alone convicted of the crime?
Well, he was tried. I mean, Alvin Bragg tried him and convicted him.
No, he wasn't put on trial for the campaign finance violation as well.
No, he was. That was their ultimate theory, is a campaign finance violation. That's how they got it to be a felony. But
when was he put on trial for that? Where?
That was the underlying offense that Bragg was going on, that it was a campaign finance violation. Now, what's interesting about that is the federal government declined to prosecute for that. But then Bragg, a state prosecutor, tries to bootstrap it and make it a state offense, just, you know, it
All right. Well, you're the expert. I'm only the fake lawyer, so it might just be the way I'm saying it. Let me just make sure I understand you, George.
Sure.
I know that was like the second crime that they were hinting at. But am I wrong to say that the trial wasn't about that? It wasn't like a normal trial where it's like, okay, here's all the evidence that you committed a campaign finance violation, and then the defense gets to fight it back. There was none of that going on, was there?
I'll defer to you. I thought that there was, but I'll defer to you.
Okay. Well, that's a first, ladies and gentlemen. The fake lawyer gets deferred to.
I just wanted to ask George if he ever remembered an instance where a state prosecutor went after a presidential candidate for an election campaign violation.
No. Okay. Once again, sui generis.
I'm sorry?
Once again, sui generis.
Okay.
I love that phrase, sui generis. We should maybe forget about calling the podcast Probable Cause and call it sui generis.
Probable Cause is good.
Yeah, it is good. Easy to remember anyway, right?
All
right. Well, anyway,
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
That prosecution was just a disgrace, and so on so many different levels: legal, factual, unbelievable.
Yeah, I followed it closely. I read Andy McCarthy a lot. Are you familiar with Andy McCarthy?
Yes, he writes for National Review, doesn't he?
Right. He covered this extensively. That's why I'm so familiar with it. It's not because I really know what the hell I'm talking about, but I read a lot about it. All right, let's see what else is in the news. Trump appeals felony conviction. That's the one we did now. Where the hell is it so I can take it out? Oh, God, sorry. All right, let's move on. We were talking about Antifa being designated as a terrorist organization, and where Greg and I were a little bit flummoxed, or I'll speak for myself, I think you might have been also unsure, Greg, is what is actually the legal significance of this? We were talking about, well, is it an organization or not? You know, they don't have members and all that. But let's put that issue aside and say, okay, they're a terrorist organization. Why is that legally significant? What can happen as a result of them being designated as such?
Do you want me to answer, or Greg, do you want to?
No, George, I mean, my opinion was it really just put a spotlight or focus for the FBI and the Department of Justice to concentrate on them and make them a priority. I didn't think it gave them any other standing other than just to highlight them as a top level priority case.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that they could probably go after the financing and, you know, impound the money, hold the money that Antifa has, go after their accounts, go after the financing. It's interesting. Domestic terrorism is interesting because there's no domestic terrorism statute, federal statute. Right. Congress, when they passed that law back in, I think after 9/11, did not define it because I think they thought that normal crimes, murder, hijacking, whatever, would fill the void. So they did not create a separate offense of terrorism. Now, where it does get interesting is federal terror. If they're declared a federal terrorist organization, then there's a whole lot of things that the government can do to bring them down. And so domestic terrorism, I agree with Greg, it really is just more for show to highlight the FBI and what they're doing than anything significant.
But I think some people have been charged with, there is a statute that prohibits providing anything of material value, I believe is the wording, to a terrorist organization. So that's a real statute. There are real charges for that. But how can that be a real thing if there's no definition or way to settle whether or not they're actually a terrorist organization? If I'm on trial for that, don't I have a right to question whether they're a terrorist organization? Doesn't there have to be some way to resolve that dispute?
You're not being charged with that, though, I think.
Well, the people who furnish the terrorist organization with something of material value, In other words, how can they be convicted of doing that if it's not even established that it's a terrorist organization?
They would have to establish that. That would have to be established. Material support for a terrorist organization.
And I guess the government can designate them as such. That's what Trump is saying he's going to do. But there must be some way to have a judicial review about that, right? I mean, what if Greg and I are designated as a terrorist organization? We just have to live with that?
No question about it. You're absolutely right. There would have to be some finding in a court of law presenting evidence that they are a terrorist organization.
But George, wouldn't they? I mean, would it be sufficient to bring in, an expert, either from the Department of Justice or the FBI, to explain how they have researched this organization and they have identified X number of members and X number of cities where they're active, and explain to a jury, I assume, or a judge, the reason why they're designated now as a terrorist organization?
Absolutely. There would, expert testimony on that point would certainly be valid. It can be rebutted, and then the trier of fact would have to make the determination based on what they have.
Okay.
Somerville John in South Carolina, one of our regulars, is suggesting that the payment to Stormy could have been extortion, that she's guilty of extortion. But that's not my understanding of it. This is another issue that I'm somewhat familiar with as a layman, because I followed the case with the guy who was trying to make a deal with David Letterman. And I learned from that if the person who is, let me see if I don't want to say this backwards. The person who is buying the silence can't, no, hold it. Who can make the offer? The person who's buying the silence, or the person who's being paid? No, the person who's buying it can make it, right? That's just a non-disclosure agreement, right?
Yes.
Right. So if Trump, with Michael Cohen representing him, was the one who offered it to Stormy Daniels. That's just a standard NDA.
Correct.
But if Stormy went to Trump and said, "Pay me or else," that would be extortion.
Extortion.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Good thinking, though, Somerville John. Let's see. What else do we have here? Oh, the DC cannabis. Now, I don't know. I got the feeling from our exchange that this one didn't thrill you. But really, this just blew our minds. It certainly blew my mind. This case, and I want to play the same news report again that we played last week. This is a woman who lived next door to a guy who smoked marijuana that was very smelly, and it was making her sick. And it was legal for him to do so, which is the interesting part here. And she sued him anyway. Let's take a look at that.
Any slight breeze can carry odors from this home to next door. Northwest D.C. resident Josefa Ippolito Shepard says for several years that odor was marijuana smoke coming in through vents in their shared duplex wall.
So I start feeling very nauseous. That's how it starts. Headaches follow, very, very strong headaches within the hour. And then I start vomiting nonstop, convulsion type.
Neighbor Thomas Cackett, who lives in the basement apartment next door, did not respond to a request for comment. However, in court paperwork, he explains why he smokes cannabis. Now, he's a 73-year-old restaurant manager who's had numerous surgeries, and so he smokes cannabis for pain relief. He also testified that he just simply can't eat cannabis edibles because it takes too long and it also upsets his stomach. Court papers show that after hundreds of emails from Ippolito Shepard to her neighbor, she sued him in 2020. The D.C. Superior Court first rejected her case. The D.C. Court of Appeals said her case deserved a second look. This Monday, a civil court judge ordered Cackett to never smoke cannabis inside his home or be held in contempt of court.
This was approached from the public health perspective, solely from the public health perspective. So that to me is a precedent.
When you live in a building, a multi-unit house, you don't live in a bank vault. The walls, the floors, the ceilings, the windows are porous. They leak.
James Rapace testified as an expert in secondhand smoke for the D.C. court hearing.
Whether you're smoking joints or bongs or pipes or whether you vape it, these instruments will produce much more smoke than will a Marlboro cigarette.
I think this is a wake-up call for cannabis users that we need to advocate for outdoor spaces and social use spaces.
Adam Eidinger led the push to legalize cannabis in D.C. and wants this case to lead to a push to allow outdoor public smoking.
If you're smoking on a public street in Washington, D.C., it's not fair that you could be arrested or face a $25 fine, have to get fingerprinted, get your mugshot taken.
Ippolito Shepard has this advice for anyone troubled with smoke coming from their neighbor's home.
Try to negotiate with your neighbors. It's not fun to go through the court system.
All right. So, George, I just want to let you know that this news report actually came out before the case was appealed. And then on appeal, the judge ruled that the guy cannot smoke pot in his own home or anywhere if he's within 25 feet of her home. And they're side-by-side duplexes. And it's illegal to smoke outside in public in Washington, D.C. So what do you make of that decision, and how might it apply to other similar situations when somebody's doing something that's perfectly legal, but it's in one way or another annoying, maybe even extremely annoying, maybe even making them sick, but it's legal?
I think the woman has a solid case. I'm not an expert on torts and nuisance, but it strikes me that this would be a nuisance. This would fall under the category of a nuisance, and it could be perfectly legal. It's perfectly legal for me to play my stereo at night, but you can't do it so loud or at such hours as to disturb your neighbors. I think that would be a nuisance, and I think his pot smoking would also be a nuisance. Now, what makes it different is that he can't smoke it inside his apartment, can't smoke it outside.
Let me clarify that. The way I understood the ruling was he can't smoke it within 25 feet of her place, whether or not that means that he's in his home. So okay. I don't know how many feet it is to the other end of his apartment. So that wasn't clear from what I read.
So he could smoke it in his apartment if he's more than 25 feet away from the common wall?
That's the ruling, but I don't know, in other words, it's a duplex side by side, so he can't, so it makes no difference if he's in the front of the apartment or the back, because that's the common wall. So he would have to move away from the common wall, but it's not clear from the news reports whether or not that's 25 feet.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know, and getting into the weeds on this, I just don't know enough about this area.
That's our third pun.
Getting into the weeds.
I'm surprised. See, it's not that I don't have any compassion for this woman. It's just a matter of like balancing these competing considerations. Let me push back with the analogy that you presented, George. You actually refer to something that's pretty common, which is disturbing the peace ordinances. And usually with playing music loud, there are laws about that specify, you can't play it loud music after a certain hour. You can't go above certain decibels. You can't hear it if it's a certain amount of feet away, and so forth and so on. So that's what I was saying last week. This is an argument that should be made to lawmakers, not to a judge. It's like this giving all the weight to this woman and none of the weight to him. How is that balancing competing considerations?
Yeah, it's not. And you're right. It has to be addressed to the lawmakers. They have to pass a law, either legalizing it or taking some other measure.
Well, it is legal. It is legal. That's the
no,
whole
but
point.
I mean, legal. It's legal in your home. They'd have to specify that it's legal in your home.
Right.
But again, I think that it's a small. If you balance the risks here, the risks of harm, I think the risk of harm to the guy is really not all that great. He could smoke it somewhere else. The risk of the woman.
Well, hold on. We can only go by what's been presented to the public. So I don't, I assume he's telling the truth. He has a medical condition and he needs it for that reason. And if he has to smoke it every day, do you think it's really that easy to just go somewhere else?
Good point. Probably not. I guess it is a very heavily factual issue. And those obviously are the tough ones. This one could go either way. I would still side with the woman. And I still think he could probably go someplace else in his car or somewhere. Now, I'm assuming that he's not completely bedridden.
No, he's not. He's a manager of a restaurant.
Okay. Then I don't see why he can't go someplace else. Now, he risks a criminal charge, but then his defense would be, well, the judge told me I can't smoke it in my apartment. Law could be crazy.
I think so. All right. Another news story that came out today is Shifty Schiff. Adam Schiff and several other lawmakers sponsored yet another amendment to overturn Citizens United. Let me see what I have on that. Here it is. Now, Citizens United was decided back in, I think, 2010. And Bernie Sanders was pushing a constitutional amendment, and others have too throughout the years. And they all say almost exactly the same thing. And to me, this is absolutely ridiculous. Anybody who's calls themselves a free speech absolutist should immediately realize how absurd this is, because the failure, as I see it, the failure of regulation proponents, that is that they've never clarified any principled way to distinguish between what can be regulated and what cannot be regulated. Like, what is the behavior? What is the activity? So I've highlighted here the part of the amendment that I think is worth focusing on. And it's just so vague. They want to prohibit corporations from spending money or have the authority to prohibit corporations from spending money to influence elections. Well, what doesn't influence elections? Anything that's said about any issue of the day could influence an election. So how do you distinguish between what can be regulated and what's not? And then what about freedom of the press? Just about every press organization, whether it's a mainstream legacy organization or some blogger. Well, bloggers aren't necessarily incorporated, but the major media organizations are incorporated. And then there's all sorts of independent journalists. And it says there, nothing in this article shall be construed to grant Congress or the state the power to abridge the freedom of the press, which sort of is like paying lip service to the freedom of the press clause. It kind of says that the press is exempt. But if everybody is the press, meaning anybody who's using mass communication technology, then nobody can be regulated. So what the hell are they saying? Can you get any meaning out of this?
No.
No. That's the same in English, Spanish, and French. No. You see, this is a multi-language argument here.
We'll throw in German, 9.
Right.
It's a dumb proposed amendment. It has no chance of passing. This is not kind of one of those amendments that would attract a groundswell of enthusiasm for it, like he did with the 26th Amendment that allowed me to vote in the 1972 election, because the Vietnam War was going on and we're sending 18-year-olds over to Vietnam and yet they can't vote in the election. So it doesn't have that ring to it, as well as the repeal of prohibition, where there was a groundswell of support for it. It's just kind of out there because liberals want to curtail speech. They always do.
Well, yeah, or they think that it's justified in this case. And the thing is, they're so in love with the solution. They're so in love with the fact that they're addressing the problem. They're not really analyzing the solution. It's not a good remedy just because they've identified, that money in politics is a terrible problem. And this is what's, is the only thing out there to address it.
Agree.
But I don't know. What do you think, Greg?
Well, I mean, it goes back to their philosophy is you're entitled to your opinion as long as it aligns with mine.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's performance legislation, really. I mean, it doesn't have any chance of going anywhere, but it allows people to rally around it and they get all excited and, you know, clutch pearls. But at the end of the day, it's not going to go anywhere.
Right. Well, I agree with both of you that it's not going to go anywhere. But I guess what concerns me about this is the mindset of the public, because I'm very passionate about free speech. And it just disturbs me that so many people think that this makes sense. You know, just because it's going after some problem that deserves to be solved doesn't mean that the remedy is good, and people don't even realize it. That's what's, and the people who are smart and call themselves free speech absolutists say, oh, you know, well, what about you can't yell fire falsely in a theater? And it's like, well, that would be a good thing to say if somebody were arguing that there can't be exceptions. But that's not the argument. There can be exceptions. It's just that the exception has to be principled in some way and clear, not some unprincipled, mysterious thing that's arbitrarily enforced. All right, I'll get off my soapbox.
No.
Keep going.
Valid point.
Preach, baby, like Letitia James.
No fear. No fear.
Yeah, I wish I had that video, man.
Yeah.
She I think went to the Al Sharpton School of Preaching. She doesn't really come off like an attorney general. Is that her title, attorney?
People were saying that that a federal prosecutor declined prosecution on this because no probable cause, and I just can't understand how there would not be probable cause. She signed the documents. She swore that she lived at a certain address. She did not live at it, and it was a primary residence, and it wasn't. That's a headshot, in my opinion.
Well, I think one thing is maybe they can quibble over how primary residence is defined, because I think one of her arguments is going to be that she did, in fact, visit her. So I guess I think she's going to say, well, the law isn't that clear about how often she has to be there, so therefore you can't convict her, something like that.
And she should have that opportunity to do it in front of a jury, yeah.
Well, she will have the opportunity. I like the way you say it. It's an opportunity. This is not trouble for her. This is an opportunity.
Correct. How many primary residences can you have? One. There's one. And if you claim another one if she claimed two were primary residents, that just can't be.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think you're going by the dictionary definition. I think she's going to argue that the statute isn't clear about, you know, what it means to be a primary residence. Maybe visiting is enough.
Well, I don't know if the statute has to define every single word that they use within the law. I think at some point we all recognize what the word primary means, and it's not a complex term.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm not rooting for her. I don't even know why I'm saying this. I guess because George says he couldn't imagine what the defense would be. I was just saying, I guess that's the only thing that occurs to me.
George, I'm not sure if I'm applying this correctly, but maybe it's a reach. But you know, I've done a little research on relocating down south, and while maintaining a residence in Connecticut, and it turns out that you have to do 6 months and a day in the other state in order to declare that as your primary residence. And I don't see why it wouldn't apply in this instance, where if she is living in New York for more than 6 months and a day, then that's her primary residence. But you can't have simultaneous primary residences.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I think one of the other issues is that, and it's similar to the Trump case in New York, when he was accused of undervaluing his property when it came to making mortgage agreements, but undervaluing it for the purpose of insurance, I guess. So I think she made very, very little, or she saved a very, very small amount by categorizing it in this way. So it's not a huge case. But you know the popular refrain, nobody is above the law.
Yeah, it was only about, I think, 16,000, 17,000, something like that. But that certainly is enough.
Well, over 30 years,
over
right?
30 years, it's certainly enough money.
All right.
So you trigger a federal investigation and a federal indictment.
Well, here I am again defending Letitia James. I don't know what has become of me.
No fear.
I wish I had that video, man. All right. Well, Greg, you said you wanted to revisit the Louvre case, so I'm going to count on you to take the lead here because I don't recall that we were puzzled about anything. But
well, my puzzlement was the expert, the art theft.
Well, you want me to play the video again?
No. But I mean, to characterize what he said, he was of the opinion that some mastermind had hired, some criminal organization had hired this group of guys to pull off this heist. I don't know, based upon where he would come up with this theory that it was contracted out to these four art thieves. But now,
let me play it because to make sure the audience and George know what we're referring to. Okay, hang on.
This morning, the hunt is still on for the thieves and priceless missing items from the Brazen Daylight heist. This video is still the only image we've seen of the operation in progress. Widely shared by French media, a man in a high-vis vest, perhaps disguised as a maintenance worker, inside the lavish Apollo Gallery. Sunday morning's heist has captivated, well, everyone.
They're calling it like, the break-in of the century. I mean, it's something like out of, Danny Ocean and George. I didn't see George Clooney yet.
As questions mount about the massive security failure at the most visited museum in the world, a leaked audit report to French media finds that the Louvre routinely deprioritized security upgrades. The justice minister saying the whole incident gave France a deplorable image.
All right. Now, what were you saying, Greg?
Well, I had read an interview, I think a BBC report, where they had interviewed a so-called, high-end art thief expert. And he had said, his theory was going to be that this group of four people, probably was more than four, but the four that were spotted, were hired by a criminal organization to contract this job. And I was thinking, that would be very unusual. I don't recall any major art thefts that were ever hired out by some other group. Now, sometimes the group would steal something and then try to fence it to a crime organization. But I was very surprised to see that someone held the opinion that they were hired purposely to pull off this heist.
What's your take on it, George?
Well, I agree with Greg. And once the culprits who actually stole the stuff get picked up, I mean, it's not going to take long for them to flip and identify the big person who was behind it all.
Yeah.
So that's why another reason why I don't think it makes sense, because the criminal mastermind would have everything to lose in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were speculating as to all the different things that could happen with this stolen property, and none of it made too. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I suppose they could try and get the insurance company to pay, a portion of it, and they make off with, 20% of it as the insurance proceeds, so the insurance doesn't have to pay it off.
Who's they?
The culprits. I'm sorry, the thieves who stole it. They could ask the insurance company, "Hey, listen, you're on the hook for $100 million. Give me $20 million, and we'll call it a day, and we'll give you the stuff back."
In other words, ransom it.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Well, this is what I mentioned to you our last session, was that I thought their play wouldn't be to try to fence it, but to sell it back, basically, whether to the museum itself or the insurance.
Yeah. Well, that seems very risky. The other thing, again, none of these scenarios seem all that logical to me or plausible. But you have mentioned some other case where the thieves stole things just for their own enjoyment of the art, and they just walked around their home and enjoyed it. So, but these look like professional thieves, maybe more than art.
Yeah, the difference there, Jeff, it was a couple. It was it's a romantic couple that got some sort of thrill out of stealing these random objects that were expensive, but. That's not going to be these four guys. I mean, that's not going to be the same motive behind it. They're strictly in it for the money.
Hassan is now calling himself Honey Empire. What's the story with the name change, Hassan? Our friend in Iran is asking, would there be any political agenda behind this weird heist? Anything occurred to you, gents, about how this could have some sort of political angle?
I mean, it's embarrassing to France, but I don't see how it impacts them to the point where it'd make it worth the risk of doing something like this.
It was Napoleon's gems. So, but Napoleon is so far in the past. I don't see how it relates to anything political in the present.
Yeah, it's just one museum. I don't know that it's that much of a black mark on France in any sort of politically significant way.
But Jeff, I mentioned last time that, they had left so much evidence behind that there was going to be DNA to retrieve. And obviously it worked at least in for one arrestee that they identified.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's the answer to my earlier question about another example of the Keystone criminals. Yeah, they weren't quite as ridiculous as the laundromat robbers.
But I mean, just even getting that mobile staircase in place. I mean, where did that come from? Was it on the site already? Did they drop it off the night before? And then you're leaving the 2 grinders, you're leaving a blowtorch, you're leaving gloves, a blanket, one of the security vests. I mean, there's a treasure trove of evidence there. Plus, they said that they tried to torch a car that was in front of the building. So there's even, further fingerprint and DNA potential evidence that's left behind the scene.
All right, we got a theory going on that the fact that the ladder was made in Germany is somehow significant. Somerville John is working this theory. Look at this. He's got the name of the ladder. So that are you suggesting that Germany is behind it, or couldn't anybody buy a ladder made in Germany? I'm not sure what your theory is here.
When I first saw German ladder, I thought of the Lindbergh kidnapping baby, the German Bruno Richard Hoffman, who was convicted of that and executed. And he was a carpenter. He used a ladder supposedly to effectuate the kidnapping and murder.
Yep,
that's what came to mind. It really is neither here nor there with the issue.
Well, John's given me a link with a story about this, but I can't do anything with the link in the middle of the show. But I'll check it out later, John. Thanks.
Napoleon was really more an enemy of England than he was Germany. I mean, he was an enemy of the world, but his primary foe was England.
All right, before we sign off, I want to just mention something I saw on Greg's Facebook page, because it seems like a real good thing, and maybe other people will be inspired to do it. This is a guy that Greg has been mentoring for a number of years, and I guess he sent you this collage of you and him through the years at different points. Is that what this is?
Yeah, I got it last night, and I was flattered that he took the time to put it together and send it to me. Yes.
Now, was this through some kind of a formal program, or is just as somebody you met in life casually and became his mentor?
Yeah, no, I was with the Shepherds program for 25 years, and part of the duties or not duties, but the part of the obligation of being in Shepherds was that you would mentor a young person for their 4 years of high school. So over the course of 25 years, I mentored 9 different young men. And I think Jared might have been the second or third student that I mentored at my high school.
So I think the word is the mentee, the person who's being mentored. Sure. Is that the word? So the mentee contacts this program and says, "Hey, I want a mentor," and then they hook.
They apply through Shepherds with the idea of they're trying to get into a private high school, and they're not in a financial position to be able to do it. So Shepherds provides most or almost all the tuition, and in addition, a volunteer adult mentor for the 4 years, just to increase the chances of a successful outcome.
Meaning that you gave him like emotional support so that he would be a good student? I mean, if the goal is to get into the school, is that what we're talking about? Or is it more about all things pertaining to life? Like
financial support and then someone to be sort of an advocate if they're falling behind in their studies, to make sure they're getting either tutoring or some sort of extra help, and to help them navigate the 4 years, and then also to go through the college application process. So oftentimes, they're the first person in their family to apply to college, and it's often helpful to have someone who's been through the process before to guide them and encourage them through the process.
Well, I've always thought this is a very rewarding thing to do for both the mentor and the mentee. But I'm a terrible person, so I've never actually done it.
Oh.
But I salute you. What about you, George? Have you ever been a mentor, or were you ever mentored when you were a younger lad?
I've been a mentor to certain people, certain attorneys who worked in the office for them. Sure. Have I ever been a mentee? I don't think I ever had the pleasure of that. It's one of those experiences I wish I had, but did not.
Yeah. Well, it's never too late. Or is it too late? You have to be certain. You have to be certain. Maybe the kid may not want to be hanging out with an old fart. What's that?
I'm almost 71, but I still am a work in progress. So, one thing, let me tell you, gentlemen, I just checked the Ninth Circuit website, and that case has been taken en banc. The entire Ninth Circuit will hear it, or actually, it's not really the entire Ninth Circuit. They do kind of a mini entire circuit. So that case is going to be reheard by the Ninth Circuit sitting en banc.
Hey, George, I have a question.
Well, hang on one second.
Yeah.
Let's just finish at that point. Hang on one second. I'm sorry to interrupt, but does that mean that Trump's authority to deploy troops is still on hold in the meanwhile, or?
That's a good question. Let me see what it says in the order.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. Greg.
No.
We got to hold that thought.
Well, I think it's back to, and I should know this because I did a lot of appeals in the Ninth Circuit, but I think it's back to the district court's opinion as being the binding ruling at this point until the entire court rules on it. The panel opinion that sided with Trump has been vacated, so that's not in force any longer.
Hassan is saying the same thing I was just thinking. You don't sound 70 or 71, and you don't look it. How old is this picture? Tell the truth. You're under oath.
Well, it says 2024 on it, so it was probably election day. Probably about a year ago.
So you were about 70 when the photo was taken?
Right, exactly.
You look fantastic.
I appreciate the nice thoughts, although I wish my body felt the same way. It feels every bit of 71. I've got all the aches and pains.
All right. Now, what were you going to say, Greg?
No, last time you had asked me how many judges are considered like a full court on an appellate court. And I just said, well, I'm sure it's going to be an odd number. And this is where I'm going to be looking for George for help on this. My guess was either 7 or 9. And I don't know if that varies from federal district or if that's a uniform number. George, can you help me?
Well, for a panel opinion, which most of them are, it's 3 judges.
Yes.
And there obviously is going to be an odd number. When the court decides to rehear the case with the entire court, in every circuit but the Ninth Circuit, it is the entire court, whether that be odd or even. That's just how it flows. It could be odd or even, but all the judges, all the active judges will hear it. And it varies by circuit because the Ninth Circuit is far and away the largest.
Okay.
The Second Circuit is reasonably large. The Third Circuit is reasonably large. The First, which covers Massachusetts, is very small. Seventh Circuit is very small, but it will be all the judges, all the active judges, not the senior judges. All the active judges will be hearing it, except in the Ninth. They tried doing it for the entire court a few years ago, and it was just too unwieldy because they have 30 or 40 active judges. And it was just so unwieldy that they went back to the old system of doing, I think it was 13, an odd number.
So, George, going back to when I had my second lawsuit against Chief State's Attorney Marano, that was initially thrown out at the federal district court level. We appealed it to the Second Circuit in New York, and that was heard before 3 judges. What would have been the full panel? Well, not the full panel, but the full number of judges for the Second Circuit.
They probably have 12 or 13. I can check it real quick for you if you.
No. I was just curious. I in my mind, I'm always thinking 9. I guess because of the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, maybe. But
yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be an odd number.
Interesting. Okay. So I was wrong, Jeff. I'm corrected. I knew George would know the answer, though.
If it is tied, by the way, the judgment below is affirmed.
Okay.
All right. And thanks, for keeping us up to date with that late breaking news, George. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Is there any website or social media page or anything that you want the audience to know about to find you?
To find me?
Yes, sir.
No, no, not at all.
You're not a social media guy. Okay.
No, I
so
am.
we
I
have
do Facebook, but it's mostly for friends, and I do, Twitter or X. But again, that's just limited to friends.
All right. So as far as your appearance with us today, that's sort of sui generis, would we say?
Yes. I have been on a couple of podcasts in the past, but nothing as enlightening as this.
Oh, you're too kind. All right. Well, we'd love to have you back anytime. Maybe we'll get the camera working the next time also.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Greg. Valley is wishing you both a happy birthday. There it is.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I will add my good wishes as well. Thanks, Valley and Somerville John and Hassan and everybody and our beloved audience. We appreciate it. We'll see you again next week, every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, George.
Yeah, really.
All right.
But pretty soon it's going to be 2 hours difference between Arizona. As soon as they do the daylight savings time thing, we flip.
Yeah, Arizona's crazy because it's not the same time in the whole state, right?
Yeah, we don't have. Well, it is, but we don't have. We don't do that daylight savings time stuff. It's.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, it's the same time
all the year round.
All right, it's the same time everywhere in the state, but you don't do daylight saving. Yeah, I knew there was something different about Arizona.
So right now it's 3 hours. Pretty soon it'll be 2.
Got it. All right. Take care, everybody.